All right, folks, Jermaine Ferrell in the house, and we have a new segment. It's called the WFXR Sports. What are we going to call it? Yeah, we're going to call the WFXR Sports Uncut segment, and it's an awesome segment. And first of all, I got two great coaches that are involved with this. We'll have it every week, and obviously we'll have it throughout. And one gentleman, former head coach of the Lord Botetourt Cavaliers, is Tater Benson. He's also one of our sponsors for the Friday Night Blitz Player of the Week segment. And, of course, the head coach of the North Cross Raiders, Stephen Alexander. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Great. How you doing, Jermaine?
Doing good, sir.
Great, Jermaine. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's an event. And first of all, I just want to we got some topics we're going to go over. And one of the first topics I want to talk about, obviously, this week, a big news, Northside football being on pause due to COVID. I just want to get y'all's thoughts about that because, obviously, that's a serious situation. I mean, they're on pause for 2 weeks practically. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, the first thing you got to think of is what's going through the minds of those kids. They put a lot of time and effort into this, and any kind of delay or cancellation of games has got to be heartbreaking for them guys with all the work that they put in. And, their parents have sponsored these kids all since Little League and Rec, looking forward to the time they become upperclassmen, juniors, and seniors, where it's their turn to shine. And I just feel for the kids, and hopefully they can get back on the field real soon.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of teams might be facing eventually, and in a shortened season like this, it's going to be exacerbated because time is so precious. This fall when we played at North Cross, we had a couple games that we had to postpone or cancel because of a positive test, and I think it's important to not to within the community or the coverage of it, point of blame or finger point about something like this. These schools are doing the best they can. These programs are doing the best they can to protect their kids and give them an opportunity to play. And we're dealing with an unbelievably contagious virus. And in addition to doing all the right things, you kind of have to get lucky. So I feel for the Northside program. It's tough to, like Coach said, put in the work and the effort and be in the mind frame to compete at a high level, and then things get pulled out from under you. You really can't do much about it. So I wish them the best, and that hopefully they can get back on the field.
And Coach Alexander, you have a unique perspective, and in fact, like I say, you've kind of gone through what everybody's going through right now. From your perspective, how do you feel? And Coach Benson, you can answer this afterwards, but how do you feel everybody's handling everything under the circumstances? Because so far we've got a decent sample size of play. It seems like the play for the most part has been pretty good. Like you could insert these games in the middle of a season. It seems like no one's really missing a beat.
Yeah. So playing football, I don't think is the risk factor when it comes to having a football season. But as we all know, there's a lot of activities associated with football season, like being in a locker room, traveling to games, being in groups indoors or in huddles, or drinking water. I mean, there's so many auxiliary activities on the peripheral of playing football that are actually more dangerous than lining up, action on the field at the line of scrimmage. That's not the problem. Yeah, I mean, but like I said, this is a contagious virus. I mean, you can do everything right, and still catch it. That happens. It's happened to people we all know. So, there's an element of good fortune in this as well. But, it's good to see that the actual game on the field isn't what's putting kids at risk. It's the other stuff associated with the sport that's really more dangerous.
Yeah, it's like what the coach said earlier. It's luck, You could have a player doing, like you said, everything that they're supposed to do, taking every precaution, going to a Walmart with their family and catch this contagious virus. And it's really unfortunate, but from what I've seen, everybody's doing everything that they can do to keep their team on the field, and it's a lot of work and adjusting the schedule, the practice, and not so many kids in the locker room at one time. There's a lot that goes into it to take every precaution. But again, you're at someone else's mercy when this comes around. So there's really nothing you can do about it. Just kind of take the good with the bad.
And then when you look at it overall, Coach Benson and Coach Alexander, when you look at it, teams, obviously are struggling in some aspects if you lose a game, to fill a schedule. You look at William Fleming, they lost the Harrisonburg game because their team wasn't ready. And I want to ask you guys this question, and I'll ask the next part of it. But Harrisonburg, I mean, obviously you get a certain amount of practices before you get there. But Harrisonburg, they said, hey, we're not ready. We don't have enough practices. But then on the flip side, you look at some teams, maybe they were in the same boat. You guys have coached in this game currently or have in the past. How much practice time do you feel a team needs? I mean, in a normal circumstance, how much practice time do you feel a team needs before they can get out there on that field?
Coach, you want to take that one first?
This is unprecedented times, and when I coached, it wasn't year-round football. Now, with the practice restrictions lifted, and you can practice with the ball year-round and so forth, the kids are more prepared to play. So, in my mindset, I would think that the kids are ready to go, and they don't need as much time because of the relaxation of the practice rules that the Virginia High School League did several years ago. So, I would think they'd be up and ready to go at a minute's notice. But again, that wasn't like that when I coached football.
Being ready to play on a football field is it's a serious thing when you take the field. Coaching at a small school, coaching against other small schools, there's been times when you have concerns as a coach, competing against a physical program or something, and we at North Cross have had schools that have canceled on us in the years past because they felt like they couldn't field a team safely against us. So I take that seriously as a coach, that a responsibility of putting young men on the field, because football is a physical sport. But interesting, like Coach said, the times are different, and even now, a lot of the normal preseason stuff involves heat acclimation, because you're starting in July or August. We don't really have that now. There's no heat acclimation necessary to start the program in February. But I think because of the specialized nature of our preparation we have in today's game, you are going to see that programs that have tremendous off-season programming, more consistent off-season interaction with their kids, they're going to probably benefit from this shortened season environment, because teams that don't have that are typically playing catch-up in early camp. Well, early camp was short, and they're not going to get that normal preseason prep that they normally do. So it just kind of throws a different factor in when you're getting ready to play games.
Coach Harless at Lord Botetourt made that comment in the paper last week that GW Danville had not been allowed to be in their weight room or doing any conditioning in this off season. So, definitely that hinders any kind of success that you might have, because you're just not ready, like Coach.
Yeah, and that's very true on that. So, and then looking at it, the second part of that question was, trying to fill out your schedule, because when you look at it, I mean, Fleming, obviously Fleming and Glenver, they were impacted by the North Side being on pause. So they decided to schedule a game with each other coming up on Tuesday at 6 o'clock over at Highlander Heaven. And you guys have probably gone through this too, scheduling and filling out a schedule. And even before COVID, I mean, there are times where it's tough to fill out a schedule. Just talk about the mechanism of scheduling, because obviously this year everybody's playing a district schedule, and in some cases you might have to fill one game in. But for the most part, just talk about scheduling and scheduling philosophy, because there's so many matchups we all would like to see, but they don't ever happen for one reason or another. And I'm not going to get deep in the weeds unless you guys can, but just talk about the philosophy of scheduling. And Coach Benson, I'll have you started off, but just talk about just scheduling philosophy.
You know, you put your team in the best possible way to achieve the success of the season. And, you know, there's so much that goes on with this COVID. And Jermaine, you can relate to this. Patrick Henry and William Fleming are not playing this year. And that's never happened. And, you know, it's a detriment to the fans as well because, you know, they look forward to those games. And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that, you know, love to give their coworkers a hard time about the PH and the Fleming game and so forth. And, you know, you just don't have that, which is a shame, but that's just the way that it goes. And scheduling as a whole, you know, you got to work with your administration, and, you know, these athletic directors are putting in double duty, I'm sure, trying to fill this out. And it just takes a lot of work, and you got to have so many home games, which probably is irrelevant this year because, you know, all athletics are funded through a majority of the football gate receipts. So that's another thing that these schools are having to counteract is, you know, the loss of revenue, you know, because you still got to buy helmets, still got to buy shoulder pads and so forth to keep these kids safe. And, you know, the money's not there. So there's all kinds of things that are going into this season that are, it's never happened before. And, you know, kudos to these coaches and athletic directors for you know, trying their best to let these kids have a year that they can remember.
Yeah, you know, I think the public school coaches in a normal year even have a lot more restrictions on their scheduling than a private school coach would, like me. We're you know, we're part of a conference, but outside of that, we're pretty autonomous in what we, you know, whatever we want to do. Whether it's playing out of state, out of division, all over the state, you know, we travel quite a bit. And I know school districts, you know, in the public school have a preference that their teams aren't taking huge road trips, expensive road trips, that kind of thing. So there's some limitations there, but scheduling teams on the fly is not easy in football. You know, there's a reason we only play once a week in a normal year because there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of scouting. You know, there's a game plan that's specific to an opponent. It's more of a choreographed sport than most sports that we play. So, you know, scheduling games on the fly, it goes back to what I said about teams that have kind of entrenched programmatic advantages. I think those are going to be exaggerated this year just because you're going to end up playing teams that you have less preparation for. You're going to play teams that you don't have as much on, and some of that is going to really affect the way teams can get ready.
And that's an interesting thing. And then a lot of times too, if you're it's funny, if you're successful, nobody wants to play you. I mean, you've experienced that, obviously, Coach Alexander, but then again, if you're a team that's maybe not the greatest in the world, yeah, we'll play you. Come on, we'll play you. And I noticed that. But hey, you know what did Ric Flair say? To be the man, you got to beat the man. And if it's and there's matchups, and I think it's funny because I see it more in college football. You know, and I have this running argument with one of our coworkers about the University of Alabama. They don't play true road games. If you think about it, yeah, in the conference, yeah, in the SEC, you're going to play on the road. But if you notice a lot of their big road games they play, they're at a neutral site. They're in Atlanta. They're in Dallas or somewhere neutral. Like, I would love to see Alabama. If you're Alabama, if you're the big boy, then you should go on the road, and maybe you go on the road and you play out of Chapel Hill, you play at West Virginia, you play at the University of Oklahoma, somewhere. I mean, because if you're Alabama, okay, if you're the man, you shouldn't be like, well, we'll play Duke in Atlanta, we'll play USC in Arlington, Texas, and I'm a firm believer, you know, it did what. But I look at teams, you know, my thing is, even, and I know we're supposed to, this is more of a high school centric show, but when you look at colleges, I mean, you know, at that level, I feel that, first of all, you should probably play an entire, if you're a Power 5 school, you play an entire Power 5 team. I feel like, okay, if you're going to play a team and they're not that good at the FCS level, what do you get out of it? I mean, to me, you probably you get more of a practice than you would anything else. But I feel like, here's the thing. If you know, play a Power 5, even if maybe you play a lower end Power 5, I could give you kudos for that. But if you're playing an FCS team that maybe isn't that great and you beat them, 70-0, yeah, they get a paycheck. And I know that's another thing that they're discussing, obviously, the paycheck games, which I think a lot of schools are kind of getting away from that with the budgets the way they are. So, that's interesting. I got off on a tangent, my bad. Unless y'all want to ask, please do. I mean, this is a free form. So, hey, if y'all got anything to say about that, go ahead.
Well, I think in defense of Alabama, I'm not an apologist for Alabama, but in defense of Alabama, I think they've proved that they're the best team, over the last decade in the country, and I think that probably affords them the right, and not just them. I mean, I think there's other schools in that category, the top tier schools in the country. They don't have to go on the road and play tough games. And like Coach said at the beginning of the conversation, when it comes to scheduling, you set your team and yourself up for the best path to success. So if I don't have to go play a true road game against another Power 5 conference preseason, maybe I'll skip that and I'll play a neutral site, or I'll play, the other thing is interesting is Alabama experiences less of it, but it's the reason that Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State, these teams are so good, is that the attrition of a football season impacts them less because they're so loaded with talent. So at a school like North Carolina, we get 100 boys in the high school. I can go play 1 or 2 games against a school that's maybe double my size or triple my size. But if I had to go do that every week, that I can't, even if I can compete 1 week or even win 1 week against a much bigger school, if I had to do that every week, football season is often a game of attrition. And when you have kids go down and now you're playing another big school with maybe your second string or your guys that normally aren't starters for you, it just kind of snowballs and it can get out of control, which is why, in public and private high school football, we have divisions with like-sized schools. Otherwise, you'd have serious problems and safety issues. So, I'm not an Alabama apologist, but a couple of these schools have kind of earned the right to do whatever they want to do in scheduling.
I think you sound like an apologist. What I'm just saying is, and Coach Benson, you can jump in too. I'm just saying is, okay, I'm not saying if you're Alabama, I'm not saying you play Clemson every year, you play Ohio State, but you could play Purdue or you could play Wake Forest, or just other than Western Carolina. I'm just throwing it out there. They'll play North Alabama, and I'm not dogging those schools, but let's face facts. There's a cachet with going up against a Power 5. Coach Benson, I'll let you have a few words on that.
Well, Coach Saban has made the statement several times. They knock on people's door and they don't answer the door. So a lot of people just don't want to play Alabama. But the scheduling kind of relates to high school as well, because the date's got to make sense too. For example, if I was opening up with Salem and then I needed a second game, and then, would I want to put Salem, Pulaski, some of these better football programs back to back to back? Because then you look at, by the time you come out of those 2 or 3 games, you're going to be beat up before district play. So, your scheduling, when you have an open date, you don't want to, put 3 or 4 really tough games back to back to back, because, you get beat down a little bit, you get injured, you kind of lose confidence, your players lose confidence, and all that you got to take all that into effect. And I'm sure that relates to the college game as well, because I'm sure Tech wouldn't want to play Clemson 1 week and then have Alabama the next week, in situations like that. So it's got to make sense on your schedule as well.
Yeah, well, I will respectfully disagree with you, young guys. I'm like Ric Flair.
Jermaine, do you think Purdue wants to play Alabama right before its Big Ten schedule? Because if I was the coach of Purdue, I'd be like, no, thank you. Let me play somebody else, and then so I can go play Michigan State and all these other schools with a full roster.
But what I'm saying is, to get better, you can take something. Here's the thing. If you're playing Alabama and you lose to them by, say, 2 touchdowns versus playing, let's say they play Ball State in the state of Indiana, and they beat them like 70-0 or 50-20 or blow them out, I think you get more out of playing a team because you have a cursory knowledge. I think sometimes you play a team that if you're getting off the bus, hey, I'm going to beat this team by at least 3 or 4 touchdowns, do you really get anything out of that versus playing a team that you got to give your all? Because I guess my scheduling philosophy, if I was a coach, and again, you guys know more about coaching and football than I'll ever know. But if I had a scheduling philosophy, let's say I have a 12-game schedule. I have an 8, and I feel like, first of all, I think teams should play a 9-game conference schedule, but that's not here nor there. But let's just say I play a 12-game schedule. I would schedule it to where, okay, I got 9 conference games, so I know I got that off the bat. Okay, I would play a marquee game. That's 1. I would play I was a Power 5 team, so I'd play another Power 5 that's probably equal to where I am. So let's use I'm an ACC school. I'm not going to name one because we might get in trouble. But I would play, like I said, I play 9 conference games, and then what I would do is if I was a ACC team B, let's say I'm the Jermaine Ferrells, I'm going to look, okay, SEC. Let's see, I'll play Georgia. Let's play Georgia, and let's do a home and home with Georgia. Okay, so then I'm kind of a middle of the road ACC team. So I'm looking out there and say, okay, let me look out there. Let's see. Okay, the Big 10. Okay, I'm probably equal to Indiana, so I'll play Indiana. It's an evenly matched game. And then my last pick. Okay, let me go out there. Okay, Big 12. Kansas isn't that good. They're Power 5, so I'll play Kansas. So I think my scheduling would be I'd play a lights out team, a team that's equal to me, and then another Power 5 that I know I could win if I even play halfway good. I mean, that'd be my philosophy. But yeah. You still Power 5.
Jermaine, let me give you a situation. This is kind of what happened with me. My second or third year at Lord Botetourt, we opened the season with Salem, Cave Spring, Hidden Valley. All right. I was trying to schedule Stanton River as the 4th game. Stanton River was in the middle of, they weren't very successful at that time. And I'm not saying it was a guaranteed win, but it was a game I wanted to play kind of, they're not up to the caliber of those teams that we were playing earlier. And I had Pulaski coming up right after that game. So it didn't work out with Stanton River. So we ended up scheduling Brookville. And they had a quarterback named Logan Thomas, and that was his junior and senior year. So up Salem, Hidden Valley, Cave Spring, Brookville, Pulaski. And we had a decent team, and we ended up going like 4-6. But, after those first 5 games, we're 1-4. Where we should have been, 2-3, 3-2, but it just really put us at a disadvantage going into our district schedule. And again, that's all scheduling, and but sometimes it works out that way. And we just didn't get it done, of course, but we definitely had the cards stacked against us. Let me put it that way.
Wow, that's some interesting stuff. Well, I guess I will respect you guys. So hey, you're on it. We'll leave it at. But y'all are on it, though. But no, I respect your guys' opinion. And that's what this is for. I mean, WFXR Sports Uncut on WFXRTV.com. It's all about, hey, let's roll the ball out there, snap. So which team or teams you guys feel right now is playing the best ball? I know it's early, but who do you feel is the team or teams that are really rocking and rolling right now?
I like, well, we're most teams are 2 games in, so we're still really early, but we kind of have to jump in this conversation now because the season's not going very long. So I can't wait till 6 games in because that's pretty much it. You got a big matchup coming up this week with Salem and Patrick Henry. So both those teams are playing well. PH in his last game looked really good. Roy Gunn at quarterback is, I think he's a senior. That's the other thing about shortened season. So, talent always rises to the top. It's exaggerated in this environment. Preparation, programmatic, fundamentals of your football program are going to help you out. But also, how's your roster oriented? Senior heavy teams are going to have an advantage. Experienced teams, returning starters, returning quarterbacks is a big deal when you don't have a full preseason. You don't have your normal preparation for a year. So that's probably not too surprising that Patrick Henry is starting to gel a little bit with a returning quarterback like Roy. They also have some young talent too. But I think Salem, because of all those things I mentioned, they're going to be tough to beat because they got talent. They've got a serious program that's kind of entrenched in the community. And they've got some upperclassmen that are impact players.
when you're talking the best teams in the area, Salem, every year is one of the teams that's mentioned. And, I think Lord Botetourt is going to be really tough to beat. They have that huge offensive line and probably the best running back that's come through the school, and Hunter Rice. And, that kid is, 6 foot, 230 pounds, and he's a man, and he's a load. And you got those kids blocking in front of him. And you look at Pulaski, they're impressive to a 2-0 start. And, Coach Dixon's going to do a great job. He has all the accolades coming in to take over a program like Pulaski. And I look for them to be in the mix towards the end of the year. And, as a surprise, what about Jefferson Forest beating EC Glass? Anytime you get any kind of win over EC Glass, it's a statement. But to come out and have a 21-0 lead at halftime and then go on to win 28-0 over EC Glass, I mean, that's a statement there as well. So there are some teams that are really getting it done this early this season.
And Coach Benson, Coach Alexander, of course, you guys mentioned some interesting scores. I mean, I thought, first of all, EC Glass, I can't think of a time. Because Jeff Whitty's really got them going again, back to your traditional power of being an EC Glass. But for them to lose 28-0 was interesting. But probably the one that kind of stood out to me, and here's the thing, Lord Botetourt's a strong team. But, I don't think anyone saw 70-6. Usually GW is the one that's putting on the points on teams. But to see Lord Botetourt, they just ground and pound, GW, beat them 70-6. Those are kind of the scores that eye-popping. And obviously, you look at Blacksburg. 0-2, and their 2 losses to Salem and PH, but they've given up in 2 games. They gave up 50 to Salem in the first game, and obviously they've had injury troubles with their quarterback Epperly being out with the torn ACL. But then they gave up 56 to Patrick Henry on Sunday. So, those are kind of some eye-popping scores. Other than those, were there any other eye-popping scores that kind of stood out to you guys early in this year?
Well, I think, we talk about some of the smaller schools. Narrows has had a good start to the year. They won a couple games in solid fashion. But, I think the scores you're seeing, the lopsided scores, that actually might be a trend. I would not be surprised to see a little more lopsided outcomes than we're used to, just because you're dealing with not just a normal high school football season, which has a ton of variance already, but you're also dealing with, the pandemic protocols, which adds a huge amount of variance into a team from one game to the next, or at least has the potential to. So not surprised if we see a lot more, unusual scores.
Yeah, I went to the James River Allegheny game last week, and, it was snowing really hard at the beginning, then, pouring down rain the whole game. But James River's got freshmen and sophomores all over the field, and they really came together, and they were impressive as well. If you look at another surprise, I'd have to go with Stewart's Draft over Glenver. I believe the score was 26-0, and that might be a surprise to some people around here, but I went to a Stewart's Draft game last year, and them guys are for real up there in the valley. And so I'm sure Coach Clifford's going to get his group back together and get them refocused. And, Glenver's always strong, so I look for them to make a good comeback as well.
And then one thing is we're going to look at our game of the week, which is going to be a battle of 2-0s. We got Patrick Henry traveling to Salem Stadium to play the Salem Spartans. Both these teams, again, 2-0. And it's going to be a battle. Right now it seems like really in the River Ridge District, it's pretty much right now at this point, it's a 3-team race between Pulaski County, Patrick Henry, and Salem, kind of going back to those old school Roanoke Valley District days when these 3 teams would really get after each other. And obviously this is the first of the triangle here. And just your thoughts about this game, because obviously this is probably going to be a big-time matchup.
So I'm not going to be the guy that comes out and publicly bets against Salem. It's going to be a tough task for Patrick Henry for sure. They show they have the firepower to score points, which they're going to need to do. I think the game is going to be ultimately decided on, up front where most football is. Can Patrick Henry run the ball against Salem? because, you know, Salem's pretty good at kind of making offenses one-dimensional with their defense. You know, Salem's going to score. So I guess my question going into that game is, can Patrick Henry run the ball? Can they score to keep up with what Salem's going to do?
Yeah, another way to look at this too is usually when you go to Salem Stadium, there's typically 2,500 people in the stands when you come out and do your warm-ups, and you know they have the student body there and they start heckling people and they got their cowbells and everybody yelling for the mules and all that stuff. You know, the Salem tradition. So if there was an advantage for Patrick Henry coming into that stadium, it would be with this coronavirus because of the limited capacity of people that they're going to have in the bleachers. But, you know, anytime you go to Salem Stadium, you know you got your hands full. And Don Holter's doing a great job. Louis Pitts is up there doing offense. And, yeah, it's hard to go against Salem.
And here's the interesting thing about this series. I mean, the last time Patrick Henry has beaten the Salem Spartans, you had to go back to 1995. So this is a stretch of, we're going on a quarter of a century the last time Patrick Henry beat Salem. So it's going to be an interesting game. Oh, you didn't know that, huh? See, I bust out some knowledge, right?
That might have even been at Victory Stadium.
Yeah, I think it was. And I think at the time they both were, you know, in different districts. So, but yeah, and ever since they've joined the same district, Salem has won. So, I mean, and PH has been close the last couple of games against Salem. So it'll be interesting how this thing plays out. And then, of course, our student playback game, which will be Lord Botetourt at William Fleming. William Fleming hitting the field for the first time this year. We got a couple minutes left. You guys talk about that student playback game, which will be called by the great Dave Ross and Steve Myers. That'll be on WWCW Sunday at 2 o'clock because we have Southern Conference tournament action.
Well, the thing about playing Lord Botetourt now, and I tell Coach Harless this, is it seems like they have the gimmick offense. You know, back in the 90s and early 2000s, some teams are running the wing tee and so forth. Now it seems like their tradition and everybody's going to the 4 and 5 receivers. But, you know, the ground and pound, a lot of teams aren't used to having people come at you like that. So it's kind of like the gimmick offense is what I tell him. And so Fleming's going to have to man up. You know what you got coming at you, and you're either going to stop it or you're not. And it's really that simple because Botetourt's going to line up them big guys and they're going to snap the ball to Hunter Rice. He's coming at you. So, you know, Fleming is traditionally well prepared, and you know they're going to have some athletes out on the field, so you know they got their hands full, but I'm sure they'll be ready to take on the challenge.
Yeah, they certainly have a tall task, especially with kind of the start of the season where they've had some uncertainty about what's going on with their schedule. You got to tackle Hunter Rice a lot. You know that, and you also got to deal with a pretty good offensive line. LB's got some seniors and a senior class that's pretty doggone good. So William Fleming's got a tall task in front of him, and you know, I think like what Coach said, if they have a path to victory, it's going to be with speed. It's going to be with not playing LB's game, because LB's pretty good at their game. I think in order for Fleming to win, they're going to have to kind of change the dynamic of how the game's played.
Well, I tell you what, this has been fun, and this is obviously the first edition of the WFXR Sports Uncut on WFXRTV.com, and it's great to have the head coach of the North Cross Raiders, Stephen Alexander, state championship coach, and of course, the great Tater Benson, former head coach over at Lord Botetourt. He's our sponsor of our Friday Night Blitz Player of the Week, which we appreciate your sponsorship, Coach Benson, and we appreciate you, Coach Alexander, for being on this. We're going to do this every week, and we'll get it up, and we're rocking and rolling, buddy. I tell you, you guys said at the beginning of the year, hey, anything you can do to help out. So, hey, last night I said, hey, look, let's do it. Let's get after it.
No, it's a good idea. Coach Benson, it's good to meet you. And thanks for having us, Jermaine. Appreciate it.
See you this year.
Yeah, this is the first official meeting. And so, you know, hey, you guys got each other's number now. I did the group text. So you guys know each other. So great. And this is going to be fun. We'll do this every week. And we'll get it out there on WFXRTV.com. So that does it for this edition of the WFXR Sports Uncut. with for Steven Alexander, head coach of North Cross, and former Lord Botetourt head coach Tater Benson. For all your realty needs, look up Tater Benson. Look up that. He's our sponsor of our Player of the Week. I'm Jermaine Ferrell. Hope all of your teams are winners. Have a wonderful and blessed day, everyone, and have fun on the gridiron.